We are on air.
Alrighty. I call this special session of the Milwaukee City Council to order. This meeting is being conducted by video conference. The public has been invited to watch the meeting via the city's YouTube channel, Comcast cable channel 30 and city limits, or by logging into the Zoom video conference as an attendee. The public may submit comments in writing by email to ocr@milwaukeeoregon.gov. The only item on this special session, and then after the special session, we're going to go into a study session. But the only item on this special session is the introduction of a resolution that potentially we could approve today, but more likely we'll approve at the next meeting, assuming that is the will of the council. But that's the purpose of the special session, is to kick off that conversation so that we have time to work on it or adjust it or do whatever before the next meeting. I assume the rest of council's had an opportunity to read the resolution? Yes? Okay. We are clearly in a moment right now, a historic moment, I would call it, and an opportunity to potentially finally right essentially 400 years of wrong, where we can begin to address some of the systematic racism that has plagued our country since before it was a country. So this resolution would do a number of things, but the main gist of it is that we would be giving our city manager the opportunity and the funding bandwidth to do this work, and sooner rather than later that we get started on this work. Obviously, it addresses the vision that this city has. It is the only portion of our vision, sort of the opening line of our vision, that we haven't really done anything else to address. We've other than a little bit of the work on the comp plan around housing, but and sort of on a big picture scale, on an overarching kind of scale, this will be our opportunity to really address the equity portion of our equity, livability, and sustainability. So I would hope to have a conversation with all of you and get your feedback, your thoughts, and see where our next steps are and how, if there's anything we need to change before next week. So if anybody has thoughts or...
Could you talk about the statement in here that says this would be one of our 3 goals? We already have 3 goals for this period of time. So can you talk about what the expectations are there, or what that means?
My thoughts on that are that the outreach goal, the biggest work we need to do in outreach at this moment in time is around this issue. So the outreach goal really would be supplanted by this overarching work, or not supplanted, maybe more enhanced or focused, might be another way to say it, that we would be doing the work that we need to do. So it would in essence replace the outreach goal in my mind.
But how can we adequately do outreach and communication to our 21,000 residents if we don't have that as a goal.
Well, I would say we've been doing it since I've been on council. We've won awards for how well we do it.
True, but look how many people come to us and say, I didn't know that, you didn't tell me, I didn't hear about it, which is why one of the major reasons why we established the outreach goal a year ago.
That may have been your reason for doing it. The reason I did it was because I felt like the other two goals would be well served by enhancing our outreach.
Oh, sure. It goes without saying. Yeah, everything we do would be enhanced.
Right. And I don't think, I think that's important. I think it's important that we do good outreach. We've always made a point of that ever since, certainly ever since I've been mayor. And I would say even the last, year I was on council, or as a city councilor, we were doing better outreach than the city had done before, and we continue to improve. I don't think any of that's going to slow down necessarily because we're doing this work. A lot of what that outreach goal did for us was to give us the bandwidth to do community events, right? It gave us the funding and bandwidth to do community events. Well, in the foreseeable future, we will not be doing any real live community events.
But hopefully by 2021 we will be. And
I think
this would still be very ongoing at that point in time.
Well, 2021 would be when we would naturally be re-looking at our council goals anyway, I think, in January of 2021. So all this is doing is updating it 6 months or whatever it is earlier, and taking the energy of the moment, the opportunity of the moment, and making sure that staff has the bandwidth, has the financial blessing, I guess, to do this work.
Realizing that there would have to be budget considerations for that. Is there any way to kind of marry the two goals or parts of them? I mean, our city manager may have a better answer to that question than any of us, because she's the one that's going to need to direct staff. But
so there's a couple of comments. I won't even say concerns. One of the things that when we've done goals historically that I try and discourage is that we try and do all the things by just saying the fewest amount of words, but really requiring us to do multiple goals within them. So I want to be careful about promising that we can do a level of engagement that we've been working on with a level of equity, with a level of housing, with the level of, so the reason we consolidate this to 3 is so that we can actually deliver well on 3. The second piece that I did just want to comment on is if we go down this path, there's a few things that I can't give up in the communication piece or in the community engagement piece, and I just want to say what those are. The first one is I have to have a software package that allows for better engagement in this type of setting. So we have to spend the money that you put. Originally, we had named a platform that we were going to use. We actually went out to bid. It sounds like it may be a different platform that works better. But basically, it would allow us to put all of our projects online in unique settings to allow for us to get feedback specific to each of those projects. And it would collect things like our demographics around who's commenting, if it's primarily a neighborhood issue, if it's grown beyond a neighborhood issue, gender, race, age, all of those pieces would be a part of collecting that information. So it also marries well. That's one of those that really marries well. If you go down the path of setting an equity goal, is because I need that information to make sure we're getting to our BIPOC communities.
Right.
So that's part of this. We would probably spend less on some of the things we put in the budget. I haven't talked to Kelly yet. I'm not comfortable, and I can be prepared to speak to that when we have this broader goal discussion about what would be moved. Mm-hmm. The final thing is that I've said all along, I never wanted to hire staff and then let them go at the end of a goal, because I think that's really disingenuous. It's been a priority. It's going to take more than just when you have it as a goal. So we are keeping the employees that we have on staff with us until they would leave, and then we would have a hard discussion about resources, especially if it was no longer a council goal. So it won't change immediately our staffing levels, and it wouldn't change our online platform engagement. I'd have to talk to Kelly about the rest of it before we had further discussion, but I can commit to doing that before council talks again if you'd like that information.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Well, I like the resolution. To me, that's the only sticking point. Is it one of our 3 council goals, or do we say we're having 4 council goals? And I guess that gets me to what I think. I mean, I do think we need a more robust and public discussion of what council goals are and how they're set than we've had in the past. I do appreciate the city manager's attempt to focus us on 3 so that we move them forward. Interestingly, though, some of the things, that we're moving forward, like SAFE, weren't one of those 3. They were, kind of done, or the library, I guess, they were already underway when she got here, maybe is why. But I think, we've set 2 goals, and if we add this as a 3rd, that are really long range. And I think we ought to be, to me, like climate, the goal was a climate action plan. And then maybe the goal was funding the staffing to implement the climate action plan. But at some point, that should be not a goal. That should just be part of the staff's work. That should be part of the city's work. It should be incorporated into the budget, et cetera. I feel that way about both the climate and the housing, and that this idea that we're going to keep them on a goal year after year after year after year means we're turning we're not paying attention to other things that, people in the community have asked us to work on. Plus, we did in 2015 a big sort of brainstorming or an invitation to the public to provide goal-setting ideas, and we haven't done that since. So I would really like to see us do that in early 2021 and have a bigger discussion about goals. But this isn't the time of year that we typically do that, and there's enough going on with trying to finish the comp plan and everything else that this doesn't seem like the right time to launch into that anyway. But I guess to me, the resolution reads well. It's just that question.
And I'd like to just comment. We do not have excess budget. We never have. It's just sort of the way we work. And so this idea that we can set a goal and keep the staffing levels without a funding source. And I want to be really clear. If we can come up with funding sources, then I'm in a much better position. So part of this with SAFE is SAFE has a funding source, and it's substantial. It allows for me to keep that work going. Housing has CET. That is not funding that is necessarily directed towards staffing. But we can have that discussion too. And climate work, we don't have a funding source right now. And so a lot of these things are funded out of general fund, and we try and keep the funds flexible so that as things come up, because these really are supposed to be the most critical things to the seated council, we can fund them. If I keep everything funded, then there's not enough money to fund the next thing unless we have new revenue sources to pay for the staffing levels. So, I don't disagree about the fact that we were already underway with the library. We had a bond, and SAFE, we had a huge investment that you all made in setting a fee to run that program. If you want to find a way to fund some of the other goals that way, that would largely help me be able to do other things, because then I have more money to pull more resources into this discussion.
Well, I mean, I do think we should be having that as part of the climate and possibly housing too. Is, you know, what are some other funding ideas? Are there grant funding even for some of that, you know, et cetera, that would pay for some of the staff time? So anyway, I think it's a big discussion. It's not one for tonight, but it is one I will want to have on the record, televised.
Have you issued all your caveats? I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to say that in response to some of what Lisa brought up, is there a way that we could think about incorporating some questions about that are related to goals into the annual survey we do at the end of the year? I'm just thinking we're not going to be in a place at the beginning of 2021, I don't think, to have easy in-person community engagement. And I think if we're going to have big discussions like this, that would be ideal. And our second best so far seems to be doing intentional online outreach of some sort. So since we already have something we do, that's actually phone. But I'm just trying to think if there's a way that, as part of thinking about that, we could also think about doing something that is an online survey that is more about goals.
I can't commit to that for this year. What I can say is the goals aren't things that I want. So the goals have largely been driven by council and the things that you all want. And that came largely, part of it was that we did the vision process in place of doing a what do you care about Milwaukee process. And that largely set up what these overarching big things were that we were going to, that this council in particular was going to try and accomplish. But I'm actually fine if there are other things that you would rather do. I'm trying to, my only ask is that we trim the number down enough that we can invest money authentically and wholeheartedly into an outcome, or we're just saying do work without the resources and nothing happens, nothing changes. So if you all want to put all of these things on the table as possible feedback loops from the community, I can talk to Kelly and see if the platform allows, like if the new platform that we're coming up with for engagement allows for an easier tool that we can do some of that on. But that's not going to be scientific. So what we typically have done with our survey is we go out and we ask a statistically relevant group of people for this feedback, so that it's not just the people who have technology access who already know all of us and feel like they can engage in that process. And that's why the survey itself works better. We're not doing that survey again, I believe, for a year. So that means that it's just further out. And I don't have a problem putting questions in there. But the point of that survey typically has been, community, tell us how the city functions for you and where are we missing things. It's not typically what policies do you want, because when we go down that path, it changes really fast. But again, these are all discussions we can have with Kelly, and I can ask her to be present at our meeting. Mayor, you had said something about doing this next week. We actually have scheduled comp plan from 4 o'clock until 9 o'clock because we realized that after 9 p.m. and 5 hours of discussion, it's really hard for all of us to be able to continue to engage in that work. So I actually had put this on for the August 4th meeting, and I've taken over the work session for that meeting so that we would have 2 hours of discussion time for goals. And I'm great with that. If you'd rather move it into comp plan, we can. But when we had talked after the last comp plan, everybody said, please clear the slate and make this the only thing on the agenda. So I did that.
Right. I just want to make sure that we get this done in time to get a process started for the listening sessions and all of that. I don't want to keep pushing all of that out.
Well, the good news for you is that while I'm waiting, I am also your equity manager, which isn't great. But we are doing the listening sessions. We're working on getting those scheduled. Brenna has been incredible as a teammate for helping us figure out how to hold those meetings. The DEI committee internally has been really great at taking some of these responsibilities on as we're trying to get forward. I really can't go much past September 1st without knowing if we have additional resources because I'm going to start making commitments to the community about what we can do. And if this isn't one of our top priorities, then I don't have the resources to be able to put into that, and I need to stop promising people things. So that's really, I think we have plenty of time to do this in August and to have this discussion and for me then to act based on that feedback from all of you. But it is going to cost money to do this goal. It's going to cost a good amount of money to do it right. And that's always been my statements around equity work is that we can't expect them to be done as a side piece of this. It's really important that they be a centerpiece of this if we're going to do it right.
Right.
Well, and I would agree. The mayor talked about seizing the moment, and that is the moment that, and I mean, to me, it's not a question that this should be one of our 3 goals. It's a question of which of our other 3 goals makes way for it, I guess, if we aren't allowed to have 4 goals.
Could we, if we're, I mean, there are some changes for this year, like the mayor was correct in saying a lot of our community engagement goal and the dollars set aside for it were for events, which are not going to happen this year. Would there, I'll just throw this thought out, would there be any harm in us between now and January 1st or 15th or whatever, your goal setting is, having 4 actual goals, this being the 4th one, and that way Ms. Ober, that you can continue to work towards that. Meanwhile, the other things that need to happen in community engagement and the new software are still going on. And I mean, I'm just throwing the thought out.
We'll never be able to pull back from 4 goals once we go down the 4 goal path because everybody always wants more. So my biggest concern is I'm really not trying to be rude about it, but everything can't be important to us. And I'm just trying to make sure that I can help the staff know what is most important to us. It's not just about money. It's literally about what is most important to this council. And so me trimming this, me trying to tighten this is, again, just making sure that we actually have priorities instead of a list. When I got here, we had 12 things, 6 that the community was doing, 6 what the city was doing, and none of them were getting done. So I really have been just trying. Oh, Lisa disagrees. So if she wants to jump on, she can jump on.
I printed that list out today, in fact.
Yay, good job.
And that list included SAFE and the library. So they were some of the work getting done, but.
And we did.
Moving forward, Milwaukee was happening.
What were the other ones, Lisa?
The ones that weren't done, proactive economic development strategy, Kellogg for Coho, completing neighborhood parks and develop a stronger strategy for maintenance of existing parks. Those were the ones under the council's goals. The council goals that did get done, this is from 5 years ago, from May 2015, that did get done were SAFE, library expansion, and urban renewal. So 3 out of 6 got
Big
done.
things.
3
Three got done.
Yeah, 3 done.
3 are still out
I think
there
there's a
waiting.
cautionary tale in that.
I love that we got them done. We've done some really amazing things, even outside of your goal list, right? So we've also tried really hard when there's an opportunity to jump, to be able to jump. And keeping this at 3 goals has actually allowed us to take an opportunity when it arises. I actually signed the DDA on Coho last week. So we're finally, that's finally moving, which is really exciting. We have the new city hall. That's really exciting. This has given us some flexibility as we need other things to jump into these discussions. So I hope you know this isn't me. I'm in for doing all the cool things, but I think that it's just really important for us to figure out what's most important, because otherwise it's really easy just to add things. And then I fail. We fail. The council fails. All of us fail because we just can't deliver the things that we've committed to. And I don't like not delivering on things I commit to you on.
Right.
And there's a great depth that comes from the work we get out of having 3 goals. And I would argue that some of the things that are on that list from 2015 are really more projects than they are goals. But that is part of the discussion we need to have in August, not the part of the discussion we need to have in our 15 minutes that are now 21 minutes. So I want to dive.
The resolution, I think, is well written and says what it needs to say. And I like the way the Be It Further Resolved, breaks out the action steps. Those are the kinds of things that we've all talked about and we feel really need to occur. So I guess what I'm hearing too, and we're missing one counselor tonight, so it'd be, good to have Council President Faulkner's input also. The big discussion, it sounds like we all like the resolution, but it's just how do we place that in amongst what we're doing otherwise, which we can do at the August meeting, correct? So we can't really adopt this tonight, or we can sort of give a thumbs up, but other decisions have to be made.
And part of this is that you all, when we do goals, we typically try and have 4 or 5 people who want the goal. And that's really just to make sure it's really the priority of council. So that's part of it, is I'd like to know where a 5th member is. And then the other piece is that I think there's some really good questions that have been asked of me about what happens if community engagement is lowered into current work. And so I need to bring that back to you on that meeting. Are there other goals that you want me to look at, or am I looking solely at engagement?
I don't know.
Well, I think we should be looking at all of them. I mean, if we're going to have that discussion of which to drop, I think we have to be looking at all of them. I'm not sure I really want to have that discussion in August, but if we're going to have that discussion, we should be looking at all of them. I do think Kelly hasn't given us an update in a while on the, and I know a lot of that was COVID because she had the work going on with the PSU group that was looking at engagement and assessing our success with our engagement, and we've never gotten that report. And did we get the results from last fall's phone survey?
Yeah.
We did. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I know that Kelly we received the information for a first draft back from PSU last week. So that's part of it, is that we're still just a ways out because we still have to go through now and work with PSU. They had some personnel issues that got in the middle of it, but they're engaged again, at least to an extent. So we're working on that again. That won't go away. We still need that report. So I'm working on getting it. The next piece of this is, Kelly, we did talk about events. There may be a way to shift some money from events that we were going to do this year. I don't know that, so I need to talk to Kelly about that. So those are the types of things that's really hard for me to do. I can also do sort of an intellectual poll on what it would mean for housing and what it would mean for climate. So I can come a little more prepared to talk about those as well, Councillor Beatty.
I think that sounds reasonable.
So you have what you need from us in order to continue until the first meeting in August.
I think so. Yeah.
Keep moving on this so it doesn't get stalled out.
Yeah, and it really is, we won't be doing the listening sessions until mid-August. But we also have an August 10th budget meeting. And so I'd like to have this decided before the August 10th budget meeting, just to make sure that I'm addressing it appropriately in that, in that discussion. And then it then lets us go into the listening sessions with a little bit more understanding of where we're going.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right. Well, then we can hold off until the first meeting in August to at least, we'll hopefully finish this conversation, at least move it a lot further along.
Yeah.
All right. Good. Anybody else? Any last things? All right. Then we will adjourn. Need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn from the special session. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None heard. The meeting is adjourned.
Okay.